Good morning, everyone, and happy Monday, and welcome to my podcast, Let's Break the Silence and Take Your Life Back. So I'm really excited today because I want to introduce to you a very dear friend of mine. And, we're going to have a little coffee and conversation with my great friend, Mickie Zada. And my guest here is so thrilled to be here. She is a content creator, catalyst, advocate, and coach. She describes herself as an enthusiastic participant in life. Her personal mission is to align with divine intent and serve as a beacon to others. Her foundational belief, if we don't change, nothing changes. Mickie Zada created and co-owned extremely financially viable businesses with her former husband. Her lifestyle was privileged. The picture she painted and the story she sold to friends and family was a closely held lie. Mickie says there was a sign in their front yard that read, "I'm fine, thank you very much." At age 53, she realized that she had allowed herself to be washed away, constantly eroded by a flowing stream of verbal, emotional, and physical abuse. That realization was a shockingly eye-opener and a life changer. For the past 5 years, Mickie's content has included a weekly podcast, weekly Facebook Live videos addressing and providing personal growth and development tools and skills, plus written materials including articles for Medium. Her recently published book, addressing domestic abuse, is titled Looking Behind Closed Doors. If we don't change, nothing changes. So Mickie, I'm so happy that you are here with us, and I'm so blessed that you are a guest on my show. So I just want to talk a little bit about abuse and how hard it was to leave for yourself.
Well, Angeline, thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest. I'm thrilled to be here. Choosing to leave abuse, I say there are as many reasons to stay as there are women who stay. And we can't be encouraged to leave. That's a decision that we have to make on our own. Speaking personally for myself, I'd been married for 34 years, and for most of those years, except for the last 11, I didn't even realize I was living in abuse. I left 3 times in those years, but I came back every single time, well, 3 times. And the 4th time I left, that was the charm. But leaving is not easy. So it's important that people who do not live in abuse understand that it's, you may look at it from the outside like, why is she staying? What's the deal? Does she like this? Does she want to be abused? No, she does not. But amazingly, we love our abusers. We set aside the negative, the real negative, the hurtful, the dramatically traumatic experiences that we're living. We set that aside and we only look at the good stuff. And I don't know why. Those of us who are attracted to abusers is pretty much, that's our training. I call it a life pattern. Somewhere along the line, we were taught that abuse was okay, that we could sidestep it. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy. I agree. And you know what? Your story actually resonates with me because I was in that situation. Being married for 21 years, and people thought that we were living the life, literally, because, we worked in New York City. I worked in my ex-husband's business and, and I was basically doing the same thing because your story really hit a chord with me. And, I was displaying to my family and friends, oh no, we have a happy marriage, but honestly, it wasn't.
Yeah, I don't,
backwards,
women who are attracted to abusers, that's our pattern. That's what we do. And those of us who work with our abusive spouses, like I did and like you did, it's even worse because for me, I thought, man, if anybody really knows, if any of our customers or clients really know who this guy is, that could hurt our business. So rather than protect myself, I learned to protect him and our business. And it's People who don't have that life pattern, who don't carry something in our heads that says this is okay and this is what to do, then they don't understand. They look at it and go, what's wrong with you? Why would you do that? So what I think is important, and when I was coaching abusive women who lived in abuse, I would tell them there's a pattern in your life that says that this is okay. And for me, I did not grow up in an abusive family. My parents were wonderful and caring and loving. However, my brothers all had dyslexia. And do you know dyslexia? Dyslexia is when your brain, what your eyes see does not translate correctly to your brain when you're trying to read. And so it's a big jumbled mess. In fact, one of my brothers described his dyslexia as take a single typed sheet of paper and cut it into about 40 different pieces, put it together any way you want to, and that's what the page looks like to him. So reading is virtually impossible for people with dyslexia. And unfortunately, in the 50s and 60s, the educational system didn't understand dyslexia. So what my parents did to help my brothers was to teach my sisters and I to make excuses for them. Whatever they did was okay. So they could break our toys, they could steal our money, they could do all kinds of stuff. And my parents, they were obviously dysfunctional too, but they taught us that, that's okay. Your brothers have problems, so we have to help them out. We have to not make their lives more miserable, I guess. Well, meanwhile, what did that teach us? That taught me and my sisters that men can do whatever they want. And it was my job as growing up, and then that just moved right into my marriage. It was my job to make my husband's life more comfortable, that he was more important than I was. Well, of course, that's dysfunctional. Of course, that's not normal. But I'm telling that story because some people think the only time you're attracted to abusers or the only time you live in abuse is if you grew up with it. Well, I didn't. Yes, that was kind of a form of emotional abuse, but my parents did it to protect our brothers, thinking we girls were really strong. Does that make any sense to you?
It does make sense to me. Absolutely. Absolutely, it makes sense to me because speaking for myself, I grew up in a Greek family. And in a Greek family, the male is usually dominant.
Right.
So guess what happened? I just, my ex-husband was Greek. So, like in the Greek culture, okay, you go to school, you graduate, and and then you look for someone and get married and have babies. That's usually
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but in this case, we didn't have children, and that was a blessing.
Yeah, it was a blessing.
That turned out to be a huge blessing. So I just want to talk about, you had started, I recall, because this is when we met online. I had the pleasure of meeting Mickie online when she created her group Shatterproof After Domestic Abuse. So I recall that last year, Mickie, you interviewed me and I shared my story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about your podcast and what were your goals and the group and everything. So what was your goal in terms of, helping women, thrive after domestic abuse? Because I
Sure.
remember, yeah, because that really
Yeah.
resonated with me.
You
So,
know, my podcast is still out there. It's called Shatterproof: Thriving After Domestic Abuse, and the purpose of the podcast really was to let women know, women who live in abuse, that you're not alone. I thought that I was the only one um, dysfunctional enough to live this kind of life. I didn't realize that there were hundreds of millions of women living the exact same story I was. I suffered emotional abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse, every one of them, all of them. So I started the podcast, the Shatterproof: Thriving After Domestic Abuse. I started that oh gosh, let's see. It's probably been a couple years ago. And I had one of the very first podcasts by an abuser, hosted by an abused person, talking about domestic abuse. So when I started, it was hard to find anybody else. I didn't find any. I found out there were a couple. Now they're all over the place. And I'm so glad for that, because it's getting the word out, which is exactly the purpose of Shatterproof, was to get the word out, to share other women's stories, and to say, you know what, we have a choice. We lived in domestic abuse for however long we did. For me, it was 34 years. It's a long time. And I could have chosen to live, I say, build a condo in victimhood. I could have said, you know what? I'm 53 years old. I have no life left. Here I've wasted 34 years married to this man. You know, I built a business that really I helped him build, and he got it. I didn't get anything. You know, I could have built a condo in victimhood and just chosen to stay there, but that's not who I am. So yes, I was angry. Yes, I felt like I was a victim, but not for very long. Then I thought, you know what? All right, I'm 53. What am I going to do now? How am I going to live my life? How do I use this negative experience in a positive way? And that's where my mission, you told my mission, it's in faith and confidence to align with divine intent and serve as a beacon to others. Well, my alignment with divine intent was not to live my life in anger and frustration. And I'm a positive person. I tried, yeah, those things were horrible, but you know what? They made me who I am today. They made me the strong woman that I am. So I know that sounds kind of Pollyanna. I know it does, but we have a choice. And my choice is to be positive, to say, yeah, this stuff sucked. It was bad. It was awful. But here I am. And here I am a strong person. And here I am able to help other women see that they don't have to stay in that quagmire either. They don't have to stay stuck in that stuff. So there you go.
There you go is right. And I agree with you. And that was my motto too. I stayed in domestic abuse for 23 years.
Yep, long time.
Long time. And I was in my 40s, and I'm, and I'm saying to myself, I deserve better. I deserve better.
That's right.
In my life, isn't it? And the floodgates opened, because I realized in terms of myself that I could live on my own. I had that power, I had that burning desire to be independent. And, for myself, 9 years being free from domestic violence is amazing. It's actually 10 years, because we're in a new decade, 2020.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give a woman who feels stuck? Like a woman who feels stuck and she wants to get herself out there in the world and, maybe go online, like you and I, we met online, and in the online space. So what advice would you give a woman who is going through a similar, abuse like yourself and myself?
I would say, if you're still living in domestic abuse, be careful. You're considering, if you're listening to this podcast and other podcasts about domestic abuse, you're considering getting out. And my advice is be careful, because women are, oh gosh, I forgot the number now, but I think it's 70 times more likely to be killed when they leave domestic abuse. So it's a dangerous time. So be careful. Make a plan. I left 3 times, but I never had a plan. The 4th time I left, I decided in November that I was going to leave. Something occurred, and I said, that's it. I promised myself over and over, the next time I'm bruised, I'm gone. The next time I'm bruised, I'm gone. The next time I'm bruised, I'm gone. I never left. But this one time, and I write about this in my book, abuse came flying in the door, and I felt my arms being bruised. I was sitting in a chair. I felt my head being slammed against the back of the chair. And my mind said, this is it. This is it. I'm getting out. And, all the love I felt for that man for all those years, and all the respect that I had, even though I'd lived for so many years, it all went away that instant. And then I was able to leave. But I didn't leave until February. So from November till February, I said, okay, where am I going to live? How am I going to survive? We owned a business. I worked with him in our business. So I knew I couldn't continue to do that. So I had to create a plan, and I took my time to do that. But I knew I was done. So until you know that you're done, don't leave because you'll go back. Don't leave because somebody tells you need to leave. So begin as safely as you can, listening to podcasts and reading books and taking classes. There's so much information out there. Hire a coach. Hire a coach who has lived in domestic abuse. Because if you haven't lived it, you don't know it. It's so easy to make decisions for other people when you don't know the situation. I coached domestic abuse because I knew it forward and backward. I lived it. People said, why don't you do a health coach thing? Why don't you coach people who need health? Because that's not who I am. Who I am is a person who lived in domestic abuse. That's what I know, and that's what I can coach. So look for a coach or a counselor or a psychologist, but make sure that they have lived in domestic abuse, because book knowledge doesn't cut it. If you're out of abuse, I suggest you have the freedom now to listen to podcasts, to buy books and read them, or go to the library, get library books. There's a lot of online seminars and webinars that you can take. There's so much information out there now that was not available. I left 16 years ago. There wasn't so much information available then. The internet really wasn't even something that we use like we do today. So those are my suggestions. If you live in domestic abuse still and you know you're going to leave, be careful, but stick to your guns. Do not leave till you know you're ready to stay gone, because every time you come back, it gets worse. And if you're out, congratulations. It's not easy to leave. It's not easy. It is dangerous. It is frightening, but it is so, so, so worth it, because like Angeline and like me and like thousands of other women, you get to finally live your own life. I said in domestic abuse, I was like a stone washed away. For years and years and years, that verbal abuse, the physical abuse, the financial abuse, it just washed over me and over me and over me. And I allowed it to wash me away. That's why my book says, if we don't change, nothing changes. I'm not saying that we are responsible or that we want to live in abuse, but there's something in our heads that says it's okay, that says it's normal for us. It's not. But if we don't figure out what that thing is, if we don't change, we're either going to go back to our abuser or find another abuser. You hear about it all the time. So it's not victim blaming, not in any way, but it is important that you figure out, why are you attracted to these people, and you can change it. You absolutely can change it. I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of got on a roll there.
You got a big role. I know what you're 100% right. You are 100% right. And I'm glad that you shared that, with the audience and with myself, speaking for myself, I went back several times. I left and then I went back. But I had a plan in place, and you need to be careful. For the women out there, they need to be careful, and they need to have a plan in place, because without a plan in place, you're still going to feel stuck. So speaking for myself, I had a plan in place. I had a 1-year plan.
Good for
and
you.
And I also had an order of protection in place, and I was living like a gypsy for 1 year. And you know what? I wouldn't trade that. I wouldn't trade that for where I am right now. So, that 1-year transition was huge for me. And that's when I reached my breaking point. So I put a plan in place, and the plan worked.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. And you know what's cool about plans? I know for me, I had a plan in place. I adjusted it a little bit here and there, because things occurred that I hadn't thought about. I had never lived on my own. I was 53 years old. I had never lived on my own. I went right from, I married my ex-husband when I was just a month and 10 days before my 19th birthday. So I was just out of high school, and I had no experience, had no clue about how to live by myself. And that was the scariest part, but I loved it. I loved it. It was so much fun. And I lived single for 14 years. And then I met my current husband, and then then I lived with him, married him. But it's scary, but it's also empowering. It's empowering, don't you think?
Absolutely. Very, very empowering. Very, very empowering. So as far as myself is concerned, very, very empowering. And your story truly, truly inspires me. And I hope that our conversation today inspired you as well. So Mickie, what are you doing right now? Is, how does the future look right now?
The future's so bright, I gotta wear shades. My podcast Shatterproof is still out there. It's about 180, I think, episodes, and it's still available. So if somebody wants to listen, it's mostly interviews with women who have left domestic abuse. So it's called Shatterproof: Thriving After Domestic Abuse, and it's still there. Currently, I have a new podcast, and it's called Cool Retired Women's Club. So I'll be 70 this month, and hard to believe in my head I'm still 35, but I'll be 70. And so I created the Cool Retired Women's Club. It's available. If you go to the website, coolretiredwomensclub.com, I've got the podcast. I have a YouTube channel. I write articles about aging, things like, gosh, when we age, we almost become invisible. And so I have a podcast episode about that. I have an article written about that. There's so many things. Do we let our hair go gray or not? There's all these amazing things. And being this age, being a cool retired woman, I still work. I do the podcast and I do lots of other things for Cool Retired Women's Club, but it's different. It's different in retirement. So that's what I'm doing now. I love it. I do encourage, because it's your audience, check out Shatterproof: Thriving After Domestic Abuse. It's available on iTunes and Google and Stitcher and all the places that you can get podcasts.
Okay, awesome, awesome, awesome. And yes, listeners, please check out Mickie Zada's podcast, Shatterproof: Thriving After Domestic Abuse. Well, Mickie, I am so happy. Thank you so much for being my guest today. And I'm really, really excited for you. I'm excited for your new podcast as well. So, listeners, please follow Mickie Zada on Facebook. And are you on other social media platforms?
I'm a little bit on Instagram, but mostly I'm Facebook. My Facebook group, I'm really excited to say, Cool Retired Women's Club group. I started it 4 months ago yesterday, and I'm going to hit 2,000 members in the next day or two.
Oh my goodness.
I know, I'm so excited.
2,000 members?
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that something? So it's fun and growing, and it's following my mission. It was divine intent to create what I'm doing now. And when we follow guidance, it's amazing how things work out. So I kind of live my life that way, and it's working out great. I love it.
Love it. Oh, that's amazing, Mickie. Thank you so much. And Liz, thank you so much for tuning in. And Mickie, thank you for being my guest. And everyone have a wonderful day. And this is, Monday. It's the beginning of a brand new week. So have a great day, everyone. And thank you, Mickie, for being my guest and enlightening our listeners on your story. Thriving after domestic abuse. You're doing very, very well. I'm very, very proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate you inviting me to be on your show. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.